Hello, everyone, and welcome to Gratitude Happy Hour, Healing Emotionally After Trauma. And we are going to talk about what that means. I have with me today Dr. Ruth Anderson of Enlightened World Network, which is one of the places that we are streaming live. Hello, Ruth, and welcome.
Thank you, Teri. It is such an honor to be here with you.
Absolutely. I love having you on with me, and I love the deep discussions that we get into, whether we're on live or just sitting around talking. It's a real pleasure to have someone to do that with. There's been many times in my life that I wished for that.
It's critical. It is so important to have somebody that you can trust and just sit around and say, gosh, I experienced this. Did you experience that too? So important.
Yeah, it really is. And as we're on that topic, we can share that we have a new show coming up on Sunday, starting this Sunday, and the first Sunday of every month. And it's called
Come to the Table.
Come to the Table. Come visit with us.
Exactly. It's going to be on Enlightened World Network live on Facebook and on YouTube. And it's our opportunity to sit with you in a Zoom room exactly like this. We'll be seeing you, you'll be seeing us, and we'll be able to hear you and hear your questions, hear your stories about all the things you've experienced in your spiritual transformation and spiritual development. And I think this time is so sacred, Teri, to be able to just say to somebody, this is what I saw, this is what I heard. Am I losing my mind? Have you ever experienced anything like that yourself? And just to have somebody to ask that to, I think is such a gift. And we can't wait to share it with you all.
Yeah, it's so important, especially in these times when there's so much information out there. And sometimes we just don't know what to believe or what to think. So opening up a discussion about it can bring some clarity, and especially in a safe environment where we work with angels, we work with spirit guides. So we're all just opening up, and bearing our souls to whatever comes through at that table, just sitting around having a wonderful conversation about things. So I'm excited, Ruth. I'm very excited about this show that's coming up. And I think it's going to be amazing. It will be Ruth Anderson, Deb Goldberg, and myself as your host, and we're opening up the Zoom to whoever wants to come in and ask their questions. And it's not, we don't have cards, we're not psychics, we are mentors, we're spiritual teachers. So it's that type of discussion, not when am I getting married or when will I have some money. It's all about really looking deep into those questions that we want answered about spirituality. So, and Enlightened World Network is the place to go. If you haven't liked that page yet on Facebook, go and like it, because then you'll be notified every time we go live, which we're doing a lot, aren't we, Ruth?
We are doing a lot, and it's really exciting. It all is heart-centered, and it's all to support the spiritual and transformational development of all of our colleagues, of all of our friends, and ourselves, because we learn and grow every single time we do an event.
Yes, we absolutely do. So check out all of the events that we're doing. We have a lot planned, a lot coming up. We have daily things that take place. So that's our little spiel. Before we get into a discussion today, I just wanted to make sure I didn't forget to share with you what's exciting at Enlightened World Network. And we are excited. And we hope that shows, and we hope it shows in all of our programs, the excitement we have to really shine a light out there to the world and let people have that safe place to open up. So I'm very appreciative of you, Ruth, as the founder of Enlightened World, and very appreciative to be such an integral part in planning and carrying out the programs that are presented there. Thank you.
Oh, gee, Teri, are you kidding? It has been such an amazing gift having you walking beside me. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, this show, Gratitude Happy Hour, we're streaming on Enlightened World, as I said. We're also streaming on Angel Heart Radio and on my page, which is Angel Speakers. And how this came to be was when I went through cancer last year, I really was lost. I'm like, why? What is this all about? And so I had a talk with my angels and I said, I don't understand. I don't really understand why I'm going through this trauma in my life. And they shared with me that I was going on a path of really helping others emotionally to deal with things that came up, like illnesses, death, grief, divorce, whatever that trauma is. We have many traumas in our lives. So they showed with me that that was the path I was going down, that I was going to be instrumental in bringing forth emotional healing to anyone who came to me for support and for help. And it was really on my mind to have a show about it. I've been working with people individually, but it really needs to be out there widespread. Don't you think, Ruth, that this is so essential to helping people?
There is such a need for it. I mean, there always has been, but it seems like in society now, there's an added piece of emotional work that needs to take place. I have seen several people just fall apart, and it's almost like the universe is conspiring is not the right word. I think it's almost like a soul contract that was supposed to happen to bring those people literally to their knees. It's like everything that could possibly go wrong, health, finances, technology, relationships, emotional stability, everything is just being stripped away and leaving them in such a naked state, and a time to regroup, a time to question everything they thought they knew about themselves and about life, and start rebuilding. It's been kind of fascinating to watch so many people going through this same thing at the exact same time. Have you seen anything like that, Teri?
Oh, absolutely. I deal with so many people on different issues, but there's that common thread. It's like there's chaos. And that's the only word that I can find for it right now. And people are lost. They're just lost of how to deal with it. Where to turn? You know, where do I turn? Where do I go to? And I spoke with one person today, and it's like, I don't know if anybody can help me. And there's that feeling, I think, that's running rampant right now. It's like, is there anybody that can shed some light on what's going on? And all of it is inside of us. All the answers are inside of us. But when we're caught up in that chaos, in that turmoil, it's so hard to see beyond that, isn't it? When we're right in the midst of it.
It is. It's impossible to understand what's happening and why, because each of these people that I'm thinking of have found themselves acting in ways that surprised them. So it was almost as if they were fulfilling a soul contract that their bodies weren't even aware of.
Right.
But their bodies were going through the motions to make it happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There have been times in my life where I'm doing something and I know it's not the right thing for me to do, but I did it. You know, I followed through with that, even though knowing, and then that gut feeling of I really shouldn't be doing this, you know, whether it was somebody that I was getting involved with, you know, emotionally, or it was an act that I did. We know, inside we know But there's those times when we can't see it. We can only see, it's like we have blinders on. We can only see going down that road and not look at the options. And I think a lot of times that's what happens is they don't see the options. They don't see that they don't have to take that step. And yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with the soul contract. But again, and I fully believe this, we do have soul contracts, but we also have free will.
That's right.
So as we are here in this experience, we have the option to say, I really don't want to do this. I'm not feeling it. I just want to do it a different way, or I don't want to do it at all. And our soul contracts, I'm pretty sure from what my guides have shared with me, are things that we need to resolve, things that we need to fully understand and work through and work past, whether it's with another person, whether it's an energy inside of ourselves that we need to understand better and fully rid ourselves of. So we do have that option of saying, I can't do this right now, or I choose not to do this right now. And, then we're procrastinating, really dealing with whatever that is. But we do have that option to do that, because that's the free will part of being a human.
Well, and I so agree with that. And I also believe that we also are always responsible for our own integrity and our own actions. So
Yeah.
I don't get to go murder somebody and use, it's a soul contract as an excuse in court.
Yeah.
I'm still responsible. And so I do have free will to say, I'm feeling this desire to go kill them, but I'm not going to.
Right. Right. So when we're talking about stories in our life, what makes us want to share those stories? What makes us want to talk about the things that happened, or not talk about the things that happened? And I think it's the ones that don't talk about the stories, or that hold them so close to their vest that they feel they're safe and nobody else knows about that skeleton in the closet. Those are the ones I think that are not open enough to look at their options, like we were saying, that think that, okay, this is how it's going to be for me. I'm doing this, and not really looking at what it's called, the ripple it's causing, the consequences, or is this what I'm supposed to be doing in this lifetime to learn this particular lesson? So when we talk about our stories, the stories are our experiences, are things that have happened to us. And we all have stories, don't we? We all have many stories.
Well, we do. But what I hear you talking about is metacognition and being aware of how you're thinking about things, being aware of how you're feeling about things, and being able to step back and see the bigger picture of what you've been through and how you're going to process it. But I really believe in order to do that, you need, at least for me, I need the perspective of being a spiritual being who's having this physical experience. And when I can step back as a spiritual being and say, okay, I see that I'm involved in this and I've got these options, then the whole thing makes a whole lot more sense to me. And I can use my options from a freer standpoint than if I really only had me in body and that was my only perspective.
True, very true. A lot of times, though, I think we lose sight of the spiritual part when we're wrapped up in that story, when we're wrapped up in going through, let's say, an illness, and we have all of this stuff churning inside. Besides the physical part of it, we have a lot of stuff to work through, and pulling on past experiences, the past stories, what happened when there was an illness in my life. And looking back at that, if we can step away and look at the situation, it makes it so much clearer, like you said. But how many people really take that time to do that? Like I said, if they're caught up in that illness, if they're caught up in grief, if they're caught up in whatever the story happens to be at that moment, right?
It is hard to step away sometimes.
Yeah.
It absolutely is. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's emotions with every story. There's no way around that. There's going to be an emotion when you're going through something in your life, whether it's a good thing or bad. Well, what I call bad, Spirit doesn't call it bad. They just call it experience. It is what it is. But when we're going through something that's not very pleasant to go through, there's going to be certain emotions attached to that. When we go through something that's a wonderful experience, there's emotions attached to that. So those emotions are with us, and they shape how we respond to anything that comes up in our life currently. And if there are experiences that weren't so pleasant, those emotions have to be released, or they're going to keep coming forward every time we have a new story, every time we go into a situation that's similar, or any situation. Those emotions are there if they haven't been dealt with and really worked through and let go of. And that's not an easy thing to do.
No, but that's the experience of life.
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
that's why we're here. We're learning and we're experiencing. And
yeah. And some people tell their story over and over again. They keep regurgitating their story because they're stuck in that emotion. And so they keep telling the story like it's now. This is now. It's what I am. You're not your story. And that's what I wanted, the main point I wanted to bring out on today's show. You're not your story. And all those things, all those experiences that happened, they happened with an ED at the end. You know, you're here as a culmination of all those stories, but you're not that story. So
well,
it's hard to differentiate sometimes between the stories we tell and who we are, right?
well, and really what freedom, when you realize that the experiences that you've had don't have to define you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so true. So true. Because when we meet somebody and we're telling about ourselves and we tell who we are, what story do we tell? You know, what do we bring forward as representing who we are? And that's something to really look at. You know, how do I present myself? And like I said, I have many stories. I could be anything I want to be, except maybe the queen.
Right.
But it's interesting how we present our stories to others and what we say after I am. Like if I was just meeting you and you wanted to know about me and I would say I am, that is how I'm defining myself.
Right. Right. So a funny story today, Teri and I have been involved in green angelic gems from Archangel Raphael. And they look like this, really little, but we can buy them at the store. And then we work with Archangel Raphael and he infuses them for us. So today I went to the store and I bought 4 really big packages of these. And I thought as I was in line, what am I going to say when the clerk says, and what are you going to do with all of those? And I thought, do I really want to say, well, I work with archangels and I'm going to take them home and ask Archangel Raphael to infuse these with transformational energy. And I
right.
thought, nope, I really don't want to say that today. So I was choosing what stories I want to put out there and how I wanted to define myself and how I didn't want to define myself today.
Right. And don't we do that all the time in real life. When we're telling our story of us, we choose what we're going to show. Which me am I going to show you? Right?
But you know, one of the things that Enlightened World Network is doing that I'm really excited about is on March 22nd, we're going to have a day of transformation, embracing your magnificent self, your magnificent divine self. And part of that work is shedding those stories that don't define you, that no longer serve you, to see yourself really coming out as a spiritual being. And when we're in spirit form, we don't have all of those stories hanging around us. They're not dragging us down. It's just us in spirit. And when I see the title, Shedding Our Stories, I think that's what you're alluding to, that when all is said and done, we are divine love. We are created in the image of the Creator. And we're not carrying those stories with us. We're nothing but sacred when it gets right down to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's what it's all about. It's letting go of the attachment. We get attached to our stories. As a life coach, I hear people's stories every day. Every time I'm working with somebody, they tell me their story. And then I proceed to help tear that apart and tear the attachment to it apart. Emotions that surround those stories are so essential because, like I said, that shapes the future of whatever you experience and how you react and respond in those experiences. So if you've had a traumatic experience and maybe you held some anger from that, whenever we go through a trauma, it's like we go almost into instant victimhood. This happened to me, right? So when people are telling me their story, I help them to see there's nothing out there that's attacking you. This is something that happened. And so it's changing that perspective on our stories that's going to heal it. That's where the transformation comes in, isn't it, Ruth?
It is. And I know for me, my work with the archangels and Divine Mother and the Christ consciousness and God through meditation has been critical in helping me to shed those stories that I thought defined me, and they really don't. But that's been huge for me.
It is huge, and it's not easy. Some people can work through it with the help of angels and guides and not have a human there to bounce things off of. There have been many times in my life when I have just prayed for somebody come and talk to me about this. My first year that I was back in Florida, it was 6 years ago, I'd been through some really traumatic events. And I had a lot of emotions built up inside. I had so much anger. I had sadness, regret. There was like a lot of stuff that was just ready to bust. And so I spent a lot of time in meditation and really got to know my guides and my angels very well during that time. And they led me through an experience of releasing. And I use that experience every day when I work with my clients. And it's something that I think is essential for all of us to do, is to really go in and do that inner work. Meditation is so important. And I know, Ruth, that you meditate every day. Mm-hmm. So I'd just like to ask if you would share, when you go into your meditation time, that's a time to do inner work. So do you have your guides work with you to help look at things that maybe are not needed, things that you can shed, like maybe a story that's popped up or something from the past? How has your experience been with working with them in meditation?
So I call meditation prayerful meditation because I am in prayer, but to me, prayer is not just me saying, God, I want this, I want that, please do that. Because to me, that's like giving God a shopping list. And I would never give God a shopping list.
Right.
To me, meditation is a conversation. It's a two-way conversation. But I always go in, I don't think I go in with specific things in mind. A lot of times what'll happen, I wake up and I go right into meditation. It's the first thing that I do. And a lot of times they will put things in my head while I'm sleeping. They do work on me during the night. And I know they do with you too, Teri. So I will come to the table with something in mind. And then I close my eyes and I imagine myself at the foot of God. If God had feet, that's where I am.
Right.
And I imagine that. And sometimes they'll take me to, I say they will take me. I believe I'm working a lot with the Holy Spirit, as well as the archangels, Christ and God. And they'll show me things. And a lot of times they take me to what I consider a boardroom. It's got this big round table, and I work with the archangels in that room. Sometimes, like this morning, I was literally in front of God and I was hearing things, and I always write it down because I promise I won't remember it 5 minutes later. You know, they'll
Right.
tell me a lot in a short period of time. And this morning I saw something, went into meditation, and in meditation there I was again, the exact same place. And God was telling me next steps to do in a particular situation. And so sometimes I'll just kind of wait and see, what are they going to show me? They always show me something. I'm never disappointed. I do muscle testing. I'll ask yes, no questions, and I will get answers. Sometimes I hear the answers. Sometimes I see the answers. If I need a yes, no, I can do the muscle testing and get that. I find it fascinating because they have taught me so many things that my little subconscious could not have come up with. So it's really entertaining. It's better than TV, frankly. And it is a relationship.
Yeah.
But through that meditation, I have learned so much and shed so much as far as stuck emotions. I have been called on my stuff where they have taught me, no, that's not how that works. That's not the best thing for that relationship. And here, you know, let's work together on healing in that relationship. So that meditation, prayerful meditation, has been the most important part of me shedding my stories. And I can tell you, one meditation session will outdo a year's worth of talk therapy. And it's free.
Yes, absolutely. Ruth, I found that too. That was my experience. Like I said, every night, before I went to bed, I would meditate. And they would take me to those stories, those things that had happened in my life. And it was shedding, it was saying goodbye, it was closing doors. I would actually physically see these places where I had been, where something had happened. And I was able to touch it with my hands and say my goodbye, close the door, walk away and say goodbye. And that's a really good visualization that anybody can do. Anytime that you want to let go of something, you have to really go into the emotions of it. I was crying every night. I was crying my eyes out. Yes. And you know, every time my guy would show up, I'm like, no, I can't go with you tonight. And he's like, we're going.
Right.
But it was for my own good.
Yeah. I have cried more in meditation than I have all of my life put together. Yeah. A lot of clearing, a lot of releasing, a lot of gratitude. tears of love and feeling unconditional love and acceptance from the spiritual divinity. I haven't found that here on earth.
Right, exactly. And that's what the outcome is when we do shed our stories, when we do dig in and pull those emotions out and acknowledge them. And that's the first step. That is the very first step to healing the emotions from our stories. And many times we don't even know all the emotions that are there, do we?
No. But
I'm sorry. I was going to say, what I ask is to be shown.
Yeah. And once you start meditating and you get to where you are listening and sharing, listening first, sharing second with spirit, then they'll come to you more often. And they'll come to you when you're, conscious, while you're watching TV, while you're cooking dinner, driving across town. And I have found, Teri, I don't know about you, but I will get feelings inside my body. Like I remember one time I was, cutting pineapple in the kitchen. And all of a sudden, it's as if my lungs were expanding. And I thought, what is this? And I stopped what I was doing and I just stopped and I felt into it. And I could feel it was my heart space that was expanding, just like almost like it hurts. It's so big. And just by stopping and listening, I was able to see them clearing energy that I didn't know I was holding on to. But I think had I not built that relationship in meditation, I would have completely missed it and thought it was gas or something,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but sometimes we do know an emotion that's there because it keeps coming up, doesn't it? In different situations, in different stories in our life, we have the same pattern. We have the same thing that keeps coming up until we get to that root of it and pull it out and extract it from us. Right. So let's talk about some of those emotions that keep hanging around until we do the inner work. And I know for me, a big emotion that I had to deal with was anger. Mm-hmm. Anger kept popping up throughout my life. And the more I worked with my guides, it went so deep and so far back in not just this lifetime, in many lifetimes, but particularly in this lifetime, it started at a very young age. And it wasn't an emotion I could express because in my household, you didn't show anger. You really didn't show any emotion, but God forbid you show anger.
Yes,
it was like an act of rebellion for you to be angry.
Right.
So as the guides worked with me, I saw that pattern just really progress in my life because it was stuck back there with that little girl that had been abused and could never do anything about it. And I didn't think of it at the time as being angry until later on. I just felt victimized. And when we're victimized, we really don't, anger is not the first thing that comes up usually when we're in that victim mode. It's usually powerlessness, anything like that. But I was holding a lot of anger in and held it in for so many years and didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know how to release it. So what they showed me was to just really give it a voice, to acknowledge it. That's the first step, is to acknowledge that it's there. And Ruth, somebody confronted you with being angry or sad or whatever emotion? No, not me. I'm fine, right?
Then why are your nostrils flared? Yes. Oh, yes. But when you were talking about shedding our stories, you were also talking about energy that came with you from a past life. So sometimes we are not aware at all of the energy that we're carrying that impacts us in this lifetime. So shedding our stories is not just what happened to you in this lifetime. It's
Right.
also what's come down the DNA, what's come down through past lives.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Things that are known and unknown.
Right.
Yeah, we don't know what all's there in the DNA until it starts popping up for us in different ways. But we can recognize the pattern, right? We can see things that come up over and over. I used to say, oh my God, I've just gone around in a circle and I'm right back where I started because there were patterns. They kept showing up. And I would just like step back and look like, why did that happen again? Why am I at that same place in my life again that I swore I'd never be at again, but here I am. So some of these things that are there that haven't been resolved are coming forth to be healed in this lifetime. And that's how we do it. We acknowledge it. We say, oh, okay, I see you. I see you. I've been here with you before at this point, and I know what you are, and I love you. Which seems a strange thing to say to anger or to sadness, but it's the love that heals. That's what heals it. It's not resisting it. It's not wishing it away or trying to force it away. It's first of all acknowledging it, giving it a voice, and then you say, I love you. You're part of me. You're part of my journey. You're part of my experience that I'm having. And I accept you. I love you. And I wish you well because I'm done.
Right. Well, it's that resisting that wears us out. It is absolutely exhausting
Mhm.
resisting your own emotions.
Right, right. Putting up that fight, and I've fought a lot, because there's times when I wanted to hold on to those emotions. I felt justified in holding on, especially to anger, but it wasn't healthy to do that. It wasn't helping me. It wasn't doing anything to anybody else. I was the only one being affected by it. But sometimes we think if I hold this anger, it's hurting somebody else that we perceived did something to us or against us, right?
Right.
It's a weird way of thinking about things until we really tear it apart and look at it.
Right. You know, Teri, I'm reminded of Bob Jayco from Co-Creation magazine out of Australia and his invocation for releasing limiting beliefs. Now, this is
Yes.
something that you and I have done together,
Mm-hmm.
and it's really quite fascinating. And if anybody wants a copy of that, I don't think Bob Jayco would mind if we shared it
Not
out
at
with
all.
those that wanted it. So if you want a copy of it, just email me at openclinic1@outlook.com and I'll get that to you. It's just a one-page invocation that you can do. And I think he suggests that you do it 14 days in a row. It's something that you say out loud. It's got a hand gesture of helping to move the energy out of your heart space. And I found it really helpful in A, being aware of, and B, releasing some of the limiting beliefs that I was carrying.
Yeah, it was, Ruth. It was very helpful in that. When we do introspection and we look at the patterns, especially in our life, and then we can see more clearly the things that we need to let go of. Sometimes we don't know where to start even to let go of it. So that's a very good tool. All the tools that we can use are, we need to get as many of those as we can in our little toolbox. So that's a beautiful one that will help, like you said, acknowledge, release it, let it go. And I love the words I'm done, because when I say I'm done, I'm done. It's like there's no more of that. That's how I've been my whole life. It's like once I'm finished with it, I don't pick it back up again, whatever it is. But anger was one of those that was the hardest to say I'm done with. And anger at the stories that happened, the situations that happened. But there's a big difference in saying I'm angry and I feel anger. Do you feel that difference?
Well, when I say I feel anger, it feels more removed, like almost like I'm an observer to it rather than I'm in it.
Right, right. You're not defining yourself as anger. Whatever we put after I am, that's a defining word. So a lot of people don't realize that. I didn't realize it for many, many years. And I'm so angry. I'm angry. And it just feels so different to say, right now, I feel anger, or right now, I feel sad. So it's a way of stepping away and observing it and seeing what that looks like. What does anger look like? So then you can look at it and really talk to it, have a discussion with it, with any emotion. It doesn't have to be, I'm using anger because that was such a big part of my life for many years. But whatever it might be, whether it's sadness, grief, joy even. I mean, it's good to feel the good emotions, but what really defines us is love. It's that pure love that's inside of us. Joy is an experience. So I feel joy, or I am joyful. It's those two are very good and very uplifting. But again, look at what brought you that joy, and be appreciative and show gratitude for what that was. But defining yourself is whatever you're using after I am. That's your story. So shedding all the stories of the emotions is going to bring you to more an awareness of who you really are. Like we said earlier, Ruth, we are spirit. We are pure love. But sometimes that kind of gets lost when we go into one of our stories, or we use a story to say who we are. So that's the whole point I wanted to bring about today is really looking at how to shed our stories. We can say all day long, you need to shed your story, but until we show somebody and explain it to where it's understood, then that story or those stories are going to keep popping up. And that's how we're going to keep defining ourselves, is with what happened to us and not who we are.
No, I always say that life is about options. And I think that how you complete that sentence, I am, is also about options. Now, you can go with in the physical, I am a teacher, I am a mother, I am a wife, right? Whatever you want to say, I'm a podcaster. Or you could also give it an attribute instead. I am love. I am compassion. I am grace. And if you sit with that, or I am humor, I am joy, I mean, there's so many different things that you could use there. But if you sit with that and see yourself as some term, some feeling like joy or compassion, and then you go about your day, how might your actions or your words or your reactions be different?
Yeah, beautiful. Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's a matter of looking at who we are really. Who am I really? And paying attention to the words that we use, the words that define us. So I hope this has helped today. Ruth, I've enjoyed having you on to have this discussion. I really appreciate you coming on with me. And I feel like we covered a lot in the little time, but it was such an important message to get out, to really look at how we're talking. The self-talk also is so important, because not only when we tell somebody who we are, right, we're also telling ourselves that. So if we're reinforcing all of those stories that happen and all of those things that happen to ourselves, it's not going to come up and be healed. We're going to stay stuck in that story or those stories.
Yes.
So, and somebody brought to my attention not long ago, and I know this, but sometimes it's a habit that we slip into when we've had an illness or we've had something happen. We own it when we say my. So, my illness, or I have, and whatever the illness is, we're owning that. And we're defining ourselves by that. So the talk, whether we're self-talking or we're talking to others and sharing about ourselves, it's crucial. It really is crucial to healing these emotions and to changing our perspective, even about ourselves, how we feel about ourselves, how we look at ourselves.
It is incredibly crucial. I was talking to someone the other day who was dealing with some depression, some anxiety, and his self-talk was, I'm really struggling right now.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about that, and we went for this. This was sort of the middle ground. I'm going to be fine. That became the mark.
Yes.
By telling yourself, I'm going to be fine, that's telling yourself, I'm not fine yet. I said,
Right.
what if we switch to, I'm fine? And that was really helpful to him. Because whenever he felt himself being triggered, he would go, I'm fine. And it would just sort of help elevate his mood back up. Almost like you're tricking your mind a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's okay. That's okay.
Yes.
To put yourself in the higher level vibrations of positivity rather than choosing to stay wallowing in the lower vibrational energies.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important to do whatever we can do to raise that vibration. We vibrate. That's what we do. We're energy, and energy moves. That's the vibration. So if we're vibrating at a low vibration, that's when we start going into being sluggish and not feeling well and being down. We're not that uplifting energy. So anything that we can do, whether it's that self-talk, whether it's breathing, focusing on the breath, and because breathing, and I'm learning a lot about the breath. I mean, we have to have it, right, to live. But I'm learning how important it is to really take the deep breaths in, because we've forgotten how to do that. We just think, this breathing that we do is breathing, but it's really not. Filling up our lungs totally and holding that oxygen in there, that's what heals us. And I've found out recently that the more we do that, if we really take the deep breaths in, it puts our body in an alkaline state, which is what heals those cells that are not working the way they're supposed to work. So it's the best state that you can be in is that alkaline state to heal and to have everything working the way it's supposed to work inside the body. So there's a lot of things that we don't know yet that we're still exploring and still finding. But that one, I was very appreciative of hearing that information coming from science that showed us that, yes, that does change your pH inside of your body to where it's a very healing state. We've heard for many, many years now that we should do deep breathing. But when you hear that, you're like, okay, and we know it works in meditation to relax us. But that was a part I didn't know about, was the healing part, the healing energy of breathing in deeply. So there's many things like that we can tune into and learn about to help raise our vibration. And then when we raise that vibration, we get closer to God's source energy, and we feel it, and we feel different, don't we, when we're in that vibration?
Oh, it is completely different than what we experience here in body. Absolutely.
Yeah. But the body feels different also. This is what I've found. When I'm in that meditative state and I feel the energy of source working with me, of spirit working with me, spirit guides, angels, my body feels different. It's like I have energy. I can move. I can do whatever I want to do. And if I'm done the lower vibration or just going about a normal day, it's like sometimes a struggle, to walk to the mailbox. So it does change us when we go into the high vibration. It changes our whole demeanor, our whole energy. And people notice. People notice this. When you walk in a room and your vibration is low, what happens? People
Right.
tend to stay away, don't they? They're
Right.
like, ooh, I don't want to be around that.
Right. Well, and it's a good reminder too that before you have a difficult conversation, to go into meditation, become very heart-centered, and that sets you up for a whole different loving, caring conversation than if you just react.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. People read our vibrations. Yeah. So even if we're going into a difficult conversation or difficult interaction, the vibration is going to say more than our words could ever say.
Yes.
So,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So these are some of the tools. We've given you a few today, and I hope that you will take them to heart. If you can't remember them, just watch us again. You can always replay. So I want to thank everybody that came on and everybody that will come on to watch the replay. I'm on every Tuesday for Gratitude Happy Hour. I'm normally on Thursdays also for Gratitude Happy Hour for Thankful Thursdays. I will not be on this week because I have a commitment that came up. But tune in on Tuesdays, and we have a different topic each week. We've covered quite a bit already, but there's so much to working with our emotions. And I feel very passionate about bringing all of this forward. And I appreciate everyone who's come on with me. Ruth, I really appreciate you. You've been on with me now a couple of times, and Deb's been on with me. And I will have different guests on to really explore some of these things. Next week, I have Robert Painley on with me, and we're going to talk about bringing comfort to people in grief. Robert's a medium, and what he does is so important to let people know that life doesn't end when the physical life ends, when this body is no longer. There's still life. And so it's a real comfort when we can know that from our loved ones. So join me next week on Tuesday with Robert Painley. And also at 7:30 tonight, I will be back on Enlightened World Network with a meditation a day. So I hope you'll tune into that and hear this wonderful meditation that's coming to you from Julia Grief. So Ruth, thank you again for being here. I love you so much.
My pleasure. I love you.
And to all of you out there, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your night, and I will see you soon. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.